Well, hello again. I find myself on a Sunday waiting for some paint to dry. And I thought, well, as there's no new Ben Emlyn Jones videos to watch, you know, they're a little more exciting than watching paint dry, but not very much. I'd do a quick video on how UFO stories get embellished over the years, okay? So this is from Secrets of the UFOs, a full documentary by Channel 7, and I might do another one actually, because I think it's Channel 7 that's got Jeremy Corbell with those glaring eyes spouting absolute nonsense. So I might do a quick video on that one. But anyway, I digress. This one is about the Westall UFO incident, something that happened a very long time ago in Australia. I'll leave a link to this below, so credit to this video here. You can watch it all in its entirety if you wish. Okay, so let's this is a teacher that was at Westall at the time. I think this is Mr. Greenwood.
2 weeks later, a knock on the door, and when I answered it, there were two people there, one in plain clothes and the other one senior Air Force. Obviously senior, had a good many rings on his sleeve, and they told me that I was wrong, that I hadn't seen anything. And when I tried to explain to them that they weren't there, I was, and I knew what I saw. And well, I think the first suggestion was that you'd be ill-advised to go on saying that, because clearly you were drunk on duty, and that will have to be reported to the Education Department, and of course you'll lose your job.
They were threatening you?
Oh, absolutely. I was threatened.
You're describing officials from our government trying to gag you from telling the truth about what you saw.
Which is quite interesting when you realise that officials from another government 12 months later begged me to speak about it.
Okay, so he's saying that he was visited by Air Force officials. They had so many rings on their arms that you know, that they were senior people. They told him that you know, if he didn't shut up about it, they were going to talk to the Education Department and suggest that he'd been drinking on duty. Now, this was the Air Force people that called at his home. Okay, this is Ross Coulthard, who recently released a book all about this sort of stuff. And interestingly, again, in a documentary that he did about UFOs, he said, personally, I would have to see it to believe it. I would have to see it to believe any of this. So he's written a book about it. He's happy to take your money, but he doesn't believe what he's written in the book. So what he's written in the book is just stories that people have told him. He's happy to accept them as stories, but he doesn't believe them because he would have to see it to believe it. Yeah, he still wants your money so you can read the stories. All right, well, let's just have a look at what the same guy had to say many years ago, much closer to the time of the incident. Okay, now believe it or not, this is the same guy. It's Mr. Greenwood. I'll leave a link to this video below as well. Apologies for the terrible audio on this. It's not my fault. This is actually pretty grim audio, as you'll find out when you play this, if you want to watch it in its entirety. I'm going to start it at where are we? 17:28. Now, remember in the previous clip, he said that the high-ranking Air Force called at his house and threatened him. And they said, if you talk about this, we're going to say you were drunk. We're going to talk to the Educational Department and tell them you were drunk. And that will ruin your career. Now, in the original story, it's the same guy, from 1966, he says that he never actually saw these Air Force guys. The Air Force guys went to the school, not to his house. They asked his headmaster about it, and his headmaster told them to clear off. And when he talked to his headmaster about it, his headmaster said to him that he thought he was suffering from the effects of a hangover. The Air Force never said that. This is just a very good example of how these UFO stories get embellished over time. It's like the Rendlesham Forest incident. You know, it's originally there's no mention of alien spacecraft or alien spacecraft shining beams into, you know, down onto weapons storage areas and all this. This is all hyper embellished over the years. You know, that's how these stories evolve. Okay, let's hope we can hear what he's got to say back in 1966.
Just saying BLE. he's the one who seemed to be quite influential.
So Sambalee, BLE, is his boss, his headmaster.
By some pressures to keep things quiet, or was it his own?
Well, I think it was probably whether or not he was influenced by some pressures or not. We know the Air Force came to the school.
There we go. So the Air Force went to the school, not to his house.
Whether or not anything was said to him, I don't know, because of his own volition. I know he had a special assembly lunchtime because lots of the children were back late and leaping the fence and going to look for him. And so there was a whole lot of rock the whole thing had been. Some people would believe anything, words to this effect. And
was the Air Force in there before that recess?
oh no, they didn't come for about 2 or 3 days.
Well, that couldn't have been blamed on the recess. On the Air Force.
Oh no, I'm saying
He had a special assembly.
special assembly at lunchtime. Which, no, that's not correct. He had at the assembly that we have an assembly in the morning and afternoon. The assembly, he had a special little blurb. He spoke about this particular incident.
So there was a lot of nonsense?
Yes.
Wait.
I was accused of suffering from the effects of a hangover and a few things.
There you go. So he was accused of suffering from a hangover and a few things by his headmaster, not by the Air Force. See how these things get embellished over the years.
How do you rationalize that?
There's no talk here of him being threatened by the Air Force in the original statement he gave back in 1966.
Is he this, simply because he's this kind of a guy, or?
Well, I don't know. He is rather. He is rather. I can believe that he would say this sort of thing.
Why? Because it would disturb the tenor of things?
Possibly, yes. He's one of these people. This is possibly how you can describe it, is that he's one of these people that runs his school on the book. And if it's not in the book, you don't do it. And there's no...
Well, on the book, yeah, okay, by the book is a better term, isn't it?
No UFO sightings in the book, how to handle them. So therefore you ignore them. This would be his type of thinking, I believe. It was his first year as a head last year, and everything was being done just so. And we noticed this on several occasions, that he wasn't prepared to accept anything that didn't quite follow regulations. I think from his manner and other things, you can explain his attitude in this case. He's that type of person.
Yeah. Well, then the Air Force came, and did he reiterate these?
Not to the school, not to the school. He just told me that an Air Force officer had been out of the school, and I was teaching at the time, and he told me that he wasn't going to interrupt my class so that I could speak to them.
So an Air Force officer, not Air Force officers, called at the school. No mention here about high ranking, so many rings up his arms, anything like this. Again, see how this story gets embellished. And the headmaster sent the Air Force officer away. He wouldn't disturb Mr. Greenwood's class, so the Air Force officer could talk to him. So he had no contact with the Air Force whatsoever.
And promptly told him to get lost again. I gather that they can't have had much time with him, because I know I was very friendly with the senior master of the school, with the second in command, and he said they were only in his office for very few minutes, and
yeah, so that's how much interest the Air Force showed in it. They were only in the headmaster's office for a few minutes. So they've gone in there, they said, can we have a word with Mr. Greenwood? The head said, no, he's teaching. And they said, okay, thank you, Mr. Headmaster, and left.
Sam would be sort of come out fuming and muttering, what rot, and all the rest of it. I gather he sort of told them that there was a lot of rot again. This is all pure conjecture on my part.
It's nice to have somebody telling the RAAF that it's a lot of nonsense and sending them packing. That's a new variant, isn't it? They deserve it. Victims of their own propaganda here.
Yes.
Didn't get along. Okay, well, was that the main outlines then of the...
I think so. I don't think there's anything else.
You're presently teaching where?
At Hale Creek.
Yeah, so there you go. That's it. There's nothing else. Nothing whatsoever about them calling at his house, calling to see him. The Air Force called at the school. One officer, rank not mentioned. Headmaster told him to go away. Mr. Greenwood was teaching and they went away, and that was the end of it. So just another example of how these science fiction stories get embellished over the years. Another one bites the dust. Bye bye Westall Westall UFO story.